When I was growing up, I spent a lot of time inches from a CRT TV playing video games on my brother's Super Nintendo or PlayStation 1. I remember digging through his catalog of games looking for my next big adventure. One of these games absolutely entranced me as a kid, and I could not get enough. I played it non-stop, and when I would lay down in bed at night, I would imagine living in this game's world and going on adventures with the characters. To this day, I listen to this game's soundtrack on repeat, and I return regularly for a playthrough so I can once again immerse myself in this game's world. This game, of course, is Chrono Cross? That's right, Chrono Cross. This game blew my mind as a kid. I would boot this game up just to watch the opening cutscene, and if I had to put a number on it, I would say I have watched this opening about 72.4 million times. This game impacted me in a way that's hard to describe, and it is so deeply rooted in my gaming history, although I actually didn't beat it until later in my life. That, however, is a story for another time. Growing up, I was limited to games that my brother owned, or the annual games that I would get on my birthday and Christmas. However, something changed when I was given access to the internet. Now, don't tell anyone this, but I learned of a secret technique that allows you to play games from any era on your computer for free. And the thing is, FBI, open up! Suddenly the floodgates opened. I began Googling best SNES games of all time or best JRPGs of all time to search for my next game to play. Near the top of every list that I found was a game called Chrono Trigger. That's when I realized that one of my favorite games of all time was actually a sequel to a Super Nintendo game that by all accounts seemed to be loved by all. In fact, most seem to prefer Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross. Naturally, I had to play it immediately. So I turned it on. I named this cool looking main character and I played until I hit this screen. And this screen never went away. It turns out that Squaresoft had prepared for this secret technique of mine, and they had measures built into the game to not allow players to progress past this screen if they weren't playing by the appropriate means. This killed any momentum this game had for me, and I immediately moved on to play other games. I would try playing through Trigger again on a few different occasions, and I did make it past this screen. That said, I would only make it a couple hours each attempt. I would get lost, and I would lose motivation. For whatever reason, this game was just not clicking with me the way that it clicked with everyone else. Frankly, I didn't understand the hype, and I truly didn't understand why everyone seemed to consider Chrono Trigger one of the best RPGs of all time. Basically, what I am trying to tell you is that I was pretty stupid. A few years ago, I finally decided that I would do it. I would beat Chrono Trigger. I felt like I couldn't call myself a fan of JRPGs if I hadn't beaten one of the most legendary games in the genre. I sat down, determined to make it to the end credits this time, even if I wasn't going to connect with the game in the way that everyone else seemed to. But something happened. I began a new save, and before I knew it, hours passed. Everything just clicked. I was completely hooked from beginning to end. I could not get this game out of my head. Every single day, all I could look forward to was having more free time to continue the journey of Chrono and his friends. I finally fell in love with the game that everyone kept saying was one of the best video games of all time, and it has comfortably moved into my list of all-time favorites. But why? Why does this 16-bit adventure still hold up nearly 3 decades later? Why does it stand out above many modern RPGs which boast more complex mechanics and hundreds of hours of gameplay? What makes Chrono Trigger an RPG legend? Well, let me break it down for you. Okay, seriously, let's dive into this incredible game. The screen fades into a quiet scene. We hear the waves of the sea crashing as birds chirp in the sky. The sound of fireworks can be heard in the distance as we see the Millennial Fair come into view. Whereas some games like to throw you immediately into a huge action set piece, Chrono Trigger decides instead to showcase the world in its most peaceful state before any conflict occurs. The sounds of Lean's bell can be heard as Chrono's mother wakes him up for the day. One thing I love about classic RPGs is seeing how developers found ways for the characters to express themselves, despite the technical and graphical limitations of the time. This scene is the perfect example. Chrono's mom opens the curtains, and Chrono can be seen shaking his head underneath his blanket. He clearly doesn't want to wake up, but then he remembers. Today is a millennial fair. No longer able to contain his excitement, Chrono gets out of bed, and as most of us do, he gives a celebratory fist pump to get himself motivated for the day. Downstairs, Chrono's mom reminds him that his inventor friend, Luca, invited him to see her latest invention today at the fair. Chrono then gets his allowance from his mom, and we are off. At the fair, we see a blonde girl walking near Lean's bell. We make our way into her path, very carefully of course, and we collide, sending us both to the ground. She stands up and realizes she lost her pendant. Of course, being a gentleman, Chrono will return the pendant, but not before checking on the girl first. The girl reveals her name to be Marley, and she asks to join Chrono so they can enjoy the festivities together. Of course, we agree to let her tag along. There are plenty of RPGs which offer minigames for players to play to break up the gameplay loop. Typically, these segments occur sometime around or after the halfway point. Interestingly, Chrono Trigger starts off with this section. This is an excellent choice on many levels. First, it demonstrates to the player that Chrono is living in an era of peace and prosperity. He has no worries other than how many silver points he can rack up to win prizes at the fair. Secondly, this helps the players feel immediately at home in this world. We are just here to have fun. We are betting on races, chugging sodas, dancing in the courtyard, and of course, we're beating up this guy. The opening of Chrono Trigger effectively makes Guardian Kingdom feel safe and cozy. This makes the inevitable shift in tone much more effective. Now, there is something really interesting about the Millennial Fair that is hidden from the player. I will wait to discuss this, but if you have played the game before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Eventually, Luca is ready to show off her invention, so you make your way to her area. But wait, Marley wants to buy some candy. As she is making her choice, I stand completely still, not moving a single muscle. Once Marley is ready, we make our way upwards and are greeted by Luca and her father, preparing to demonstrate their newest invention. They need a volunteer, so of course, Chrono steps up to be the guinea pig. They kick on the machine, and suddenly, Chrono is teleported to the other side of the screen, absolutely blowing the minds of the 4 people in the audience. Marley wants to go next, and Luca does this hilarious thing with her glasses, as she wonders how Chrono could pick up a cutie like Marley. When Marley steps onto the teleporter, something is different. As the machine kicks on, her pendant begins to sparkle. Something isn't right. Luca's invention appears to malfunction as a portal opens, drawing Marley inside. In a flash, Marley is gone, only leaving her pendant behind. Luca's father ushers the crowd away, unsure of what to do next. Chrono, however, is completely sure of what to do next. He picks up Marley's pendant and is ready to follow her because it is simply the right thing to do. Luca fires up the machine again, and just like that, our true adventure has begun. I love this sequence, as it effectively establishes the characters of Luca, Marley, and Chrono. Luca is shown to be the nerdy inventor archetype. She is clearly intelligent beyond her years, but she is also shown to be playful. Marley is energetic, outgoing, and she simply has a clear desire to live life to its fullest. This lays the groundwork for later reveals about her character. And then we get to Chrono, who demonstrates that he is completely willing to take on unknown risks to do the right thing. He doesn't know what is on the other side of that portal, but he knows that he must go through it regardless. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the characters in this game are deep and complex. Aside from a couple standouts, the characters are actually pretty simple. But who said that's a bad thing? In Chrono Trigger, this simplicity shines because the characters are written with so much heart and charm that you can't help but become attached to them throughout the journey. Speaking of the journey, Chrono exits the portal and is attacked by blue imps. We take care of them, along with a few more groups of enemies on our way out of the mountains. When we exit the area, we are greeted with a sight that is simultaneously familiar and foreign. A melancholic song kicks in to properly set the atmosphere. This place appears to be the home we know, but at the same time, something isn't right. At the nearby inn, people are discussing how the Queen of Guardia, Lean, was just found in the mountains. Considering we just came from the mountains after exiting the portal, this seems like something we should look into. On our way to the castle, we make our way through a forest, which has one of those songs that makes you just want to sit the controller down for a while to take it all in. I will touch on this throughout the video, but this soundtrack is ridiculously good. Let's just say that Yasunori Mitsuda and Nobuo Uematsu were absolutely cooking in the studio for this game. To further cement this point, let's take a listen to the theme that plays when we first enter Guardia Castle. At first, it feels pretty standard, right? It opens with a steady drum beat that you'd expect from a royal procession. Then the horns come in, reinforcing that formal, regal vibe. It feels stately and composed, exactly what you'd expect from a castle theme. But this song is a perfect reflection of how Chrono Trigger takes the standard things you expect from a JRPG and expands and refines them to such a pristine degree that it is consistently delightful to experience. Around 50 seconds into this song, it shifts from your standard castle theme to an epic orchestral swell. Back to the adventure, guards try to stop us as we enter the castle, but Marley, in disguise as Queen Lean, orders the guards to leave us alone. I love the little laugh she does after giving the orders, showing us how much fun Marley is having impersonating the Queen. Afterwards, we can explore the castle to our heart's content. The Chancellor seems a bit suspicious of Marley's appearance in the castle, and following him upstairs, we learn that all may not be as it seems, as the Chancellor has been acting rather strange lately. I think there just might be an imposter among us. Eventually, we find Marley in the Queen's room, and her and Chrono share a touching scene. The happy reunion is cut short, however. The screen darkens. Marley hauntingly begs for help as she can feel her body being torn apart. Chrono reaches for her, but his efforts are in vain. Marley disappears. Of course, we have to figure out what happened and how to save her. But first, there's treasure right over there.
Here comes the money!
Downstairs, Luca arrives and explains the situation to Chrono. The portal they opened at the Millennial Fair, which she refers to as a gate, took Marley and Chrono to the past. When Marley arrived in the mountains, she was mistaken for her ancestor, Queen Lean, who was still missing. Since Marley was found, the search for Queen Lean was called off, resulting in a paradox. Marley cannot exist if Queen Lean is never found, and so she disappeared. To correct this, Chrono and Luca set off to save the Queen. We arrive at a nearby cathedral and fight monsters who were disguising themselves as nuns. Following the battle, Luca is attacked by a monster before being saved by one of the best characters in the game, the loyal knight, Frog. He tells us the Queen is further inside and asks us to join him. With Frog in the party, we make our way through the cathedral and find none other than the Chancellor, who reveals his true form to be the fiend Yakra. After defeating him and rescuing the Queen, we must collect the treasure at the back of the room. Hilariously, when you open the left chest, the real Chancellor springs out of it. If Chrono Trigger ever gets a remake, they better keep goofy things like this in the game because it genuinely adds so much charm. I mean, how could you not love this? Back at the castle, the king is happy to reunite with Queen Lean, and the Chancellor vows to start a criminal justice system that will eliminate fiends like Yakra. Frog, ashamed of failing to protect the Queen from being kidnapped in the first place, leaves, never to be seen again. Chrono and Luca make their way upstairs to find that Marley has returned safely. Mission success, and there's nothing left to do now but return home. This marks the end of the opening act of Chrono Trigger. Chrono and his friends begin their epic quest that will span many time periods, but before we explore that further, we need to talk about everything in between the major story beats, the gameplay loop. Nailing the gameplay loop is crucial for any good JRPG. No matter how captivating the characters or how memorable the music, the bulk of the experience comes from exploring the world and engaging in battles. And as the wise Reggie Nintendo once said,
"If it's not fun, why bother?"
And thankfully, Chrono Trigger is still an absolute blast to play. Chrono Trigger follows a familiar JRPG gameplay loop. gather information, explore dungeons, battle enemies and face off against bosses, and then rinse and repeat. This classic formula has proven successful in many games, and Chrono Trigger is no exception. What sets it apart, however, is the use of time travel. It breathes new life into this formula, and it just adds a cool factor that connects with most of us. I mean, who hasn't dreamed of being able to time travel? A shining example of how Chrono Trigger cleverly uses time travel as both a narrative and gameplay device is the Sunstone side quest, which takes place near the end of the game. Exploring 2300 AD, you can discover the Sun Shrine, where a once powerful Sunstone has lost all of its energy. Lucas says that we can recharge it, but the process of absorbing the sun's energy would take eons. Well, naturally, we want to take the Sunstone as far back in time as possible, and then just blip to the future to reap the rewards. So, we can bring the Sunstone to a shrine in 65 million BC and leave it in the sunlight. The quest gets even better, however, as it's not just as simple as returning to the future to grab the stone. Once the party returns to the shrine in 2300 AD, the stone is missing. Luckily, in this moment, one of our party members will channel the deductive reasoning of Sherlock Holmes times a million. The moonstone is gone. Let me think about this for a minute.
The prophecy is true.
Yes. It seems it's been gone for 1300 years or so. Let's get back to the present. I actually had to sit still for a moment after that dialogue because how does he know that? Traveling the world in 1000 AD, you will notice a house that seems to be sparkling. This house belongs to the mayor of Por. Going inside, we find a family who is being torn apart by the greed of the father. The dialogue from the kids in particular makes me laugh. It's quite obvious to the player that the mayor has the Sunstone, but he refuses to admit it. Well, now what? Well, we need to fix his greed, of course. To do this, we must travel back to 600 AD to meet with the mayor's ancestor. We meet her and she offers 10,000 gold for some jerky. By choosing to give it to her for free, she is deeply moved and promises to instill that same sense of generosity in her bloodline. Returning to the mayor's house in 1000 AD, we see that the attitudes of his family has completely changed. Well, his wife is still unhappy with him, but the kids now love their father. Being a much more generous man because of our actions, he gives the party the Sunstone without a second thought, which allows us to craft some pretty powerful items. The Sunstone quest is a brilliant example of how Chrono Trigger blends storytelling, time travel, and gameplay. It's not just about completing a throwaway side quest. It's about understanding how your actions in the past can affect the future, all while earning powerful rewards that reflect your efforts across multiple eras. This side quest highlights the game's theme of interconnectedness across time, and showcases the clever ways the developers wove time travel into both the narrative and the gameplay loop. Outside of the time travel component, Chrono Trigger follows most of the standard JRPG design principles. If you have played a lot of JRPGs, then Chrono Trigger will feel right at home in its moment-to-moment gameplay. While the game does not radically reinvent the wheel in terms of its mechanics, it takes the familiar building blocks of the genre and refines them to such a high level of polish that the game feels both fresh and innovative, even to this day. For example, most JRPGs reward players with treasure for exploring every nook and cranny of the world. Chrono Trigger is no different, but there is one major difference between Chrono Trigger and the JRPGs of its time. Chrono Trigger has no random encounters. Random encounters are not typical in modern games, thank goodness, but 90% of JRPGs from this era had them. For me, the problem with random encounters is that I feel actively discouraged from exploring the world. In most games, these random encounters are mindless and you can just press the attack button again and again until it's over without ever being in any real danger of dying. In fact, you may not even need to heal after one of these battles. So I cannot describe how refreshing it is to play a game from this era where you can just run around the enemies on the map to avoid a battle. Now I feel rejuvenated. When I see a treasure chest in the corner of the map, I feel no pressure to find the shortest possible path to it to minimize encounters. There have been times when I see a chest and then get to the end of a room and realize that I never actually found it. In games with random encounters, I would probably just move on and never get the treasure because I didn't want to go through the 5 to 6 random battles just to end up with a basic potion. In Chrono Trigger, even if the treasure is underwhelming, I don't feel like the game is giving me a middle finger when I spend the extra time going back for that treasure that I missed. This one decision dramatically improves the pacing and overall feel of playing Chrono Trigger. Now, let's talk about the encounters themselves. Overall, Chrono Trigger's battle system is simple, but incredibly effective and satisfying. At its core, it's a straightforward, active time battle system where you wait for your character's bars to fill up before they can take an action. Once it's your turn, you have 3 basic choices: a standard attack, a technique, or tech, or an item. The simplicity makes it easy for anyone to pick up and understand right away. But if you have played Chrono Trigger, you know what makes this system so satisfying to play. The tech system in Chrono Trigger is so much fun. Each character has their own unique set of techs, which both include physical and magical attacks. As you would expect, these attacks are much more powerful and useful than the basic attack, but they cost MP to perform. As you progress through the game, however, your team learns dual and triple techs, which allow for you to give up 2 or 3 party members' turns to execute a single technique that is both flashy and powerful. There are several different combinations, and this encourages players to mix up their party to discover all the possible synergies. The dual and triple tech system helps make this group of travelers feel like a team that coordinates their attacks to successfully defeat enemies in their way. I love it when RPGs make my party feel like a cohesive unit that supports one another, and Chrono Trigger does that effectively in battle. The difficulty of these encounters is hit or miss. Chrono Trigger can suffer from the same issue that other RPGs suffer from, which is that many of the enemy encounters are trivial and do not require much input from the player to complete. However, there will be some encounters that will make you pay quickly if all you do is mash the attack button or the same tech that you have been spamming all game. Some enemies will effectively ignore physical attacks or absorb specific magic types, requiring the player to change their strategy, although likely not by much. I still appreciate it when an enemy encounter throws something different at me. Even in easy fights, however, I still enjoy experimenting with the different techs and seeing which ones can wipe a whole battlefield in a single blow. It's satisfying in its own right. Personally, I don't mind that many of the standard battles in Chrono Trigger are on the easier side, though I know some players prefer more challenge in their RPGs. Fortunately for those seeking a bit more excitement, the boss battles in this game are where the developers really show their creativity. One early standout is the fight against the Dragon Tank, which forces players to think strategically rather than just relying on brute force. The Dragon Tank has multiple parts: its head, body, and wheels, all of which need to be dealt with carefully. The head continually heals the tank, meaning players must prioritize it first to prevent the boss from regenerating. Meanwhile, the body deals heavy damage and the wheels can mow your party down if left unchecked. This layered design pushes players to focus on target selection and timing, making the encounter more engaging than simply do big attack, heal, repeat. Now, don't get me wrong, this game's combat is not perfect, nor is it balanced well with the in-game abilities. In fact, once Chrono unlocks the ability Luminaire, the game basically becomes a Luminaire cutscene simulator, as 99% of encounters are trivialized by that tech. It targets all enemies and it does insane damage, and there is usually no better or quicker option to get through your fights. It does have a steep cost, but that doesn't matter. As the game progresses, you quickly gain enough gold to buy 99 ethers, which recovers your MP. So you can replenish Chrono's MP after each encounter, and then cast this godlike spell to your heart's content. Repeat this until the end of the game and you are basically golden. Item economy is a tricky thing to manage in these games. Early on, the player has little gold, and so the prices in the shops need to be low to accommodate for this. As the game progresses, the encounters begin providing players with more and more gold to account for the rising prices of equipment and items in the new areas. However, the old areas still have the same pricing. Unfortunately, just like many RPGs before and since, this greatly affects Chrono Trigger's balancing. I think an easy solution for this would be to just remove ethers from all shops entirely and only have them be acquired through treasure chests. Players could still purchase shelters and use them at save points to restore MP. This change will require players to think much differently about how they approach the encounters between save points, and I think this could be a great way to further enhance the gameplay loop. It may not be the perfect solution, but I think it would go a long way in balancing the game and making each dungeon encounter feel much more meaningful. Still, the positives greatly outweigh the negatives here. Even in the late game when Luminaire is destroying everything, you can still run into the occasional boss fight that will absolutely wreck you if you are not prepared to adjust. And while the balancing can be a little rough in the later half of the game, I can't deny the simple pleasure of decimating everything that stands in your way. At the end of the day, Chrono Trigger's gameplay loop is remarkably satisfying. The combination of its streamlined battle mechanics, innovative tech system, and a smart use of time travel make it stand out in a genre crowded with imitators. It's a testament to how well these mechanics were designed that, even today, it feels fresh and engaging in a way that not many other games have captured. Simply put, Chrono Trigger is fun to play, even when examining it through a modern lens. I think it's safe to say that Chrono Trigger was ahead of its time.
Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up!
But as strong as the gameplay is, Chrono Trigger's lasting legacy comes from more than just its battle system or time travel mechanics. The heart of the game, and the reason it has cemented itself in the hearts of many as an all-time great, is its story, characters, and soundtrack. These three components come together in wonderful and surprising ways to craft an epic thrill ride that traverses 65 million years. And now, it's time to take a deeper look. When we last left Chrono, Luca, and Marley, they had just reunited in the Middle Ages after rescuing Queen Leene. In the present day, Chrono takes Marley back to Castle Guardia, but is quickly detained by the guards for kidnapping the princess. Marley protests, but alas, Chrono must stand trial for his actions. Now, before diving into this iconic trial scene, I need to show you something else. If you have played the game before, you will have noticed that I played through the Millennial Fair in a very specific way. I was very conscious about my actions. When I first played the game, that was not the case. And this is something universal among nearly everyone who has played through Chrono Trigger. So, let's take a moment to recap the Millennial Fair from the perspective of someone playing it for the first time, shall we? Alright, let's see. Oh, there's this girl here. Let's talk to her. Oh, okay, well, I'll get her pin it back for her since she's missing that. Okay, yep, here you go. Nice. Ooh, look, a pink treasure? Oh, food. Tastes like chicken. Huh. Okay, what's this old guy up to? No time to talk. I'm just sitting down for my lunch. Should I reset? Okay, this little girl's missing her cat. Okay, I can't forget to look for that. Huh. That's pretty funny. All right, Luca's invention's finally ready to go, and Marley's not. All right, we're getting candy? All right, let's go. Really? Could I just keep... Okay. Once you have played this game, you will never make these mistakes ever again. At the time, these moments feel trivial. I certainly didn't think much of them on my first run. But then, we get to the trial. The Chancellor asked Chrono who started this mess. Well, of course it was Marley, right? We collided at the fair. Well, a witness will say that it was you who bumped into her. Okay, well that's unavoidable since there really isn't any other way to progress through the game. But then the Chancellor decides to bring in witnesses to testify to Chrono's bad character in an attempt to show the jury he is capable of committing the crime of which he is accused. Suddenly, your seemingly innocuous choices are paraded in front of you. The little girl missing her cat will come in and chastise Chrono for forgetting about her, and that is something I genuinely did when I first played the game. I don't know how it slipped my mind, but when she entered the courtroom, I actually felt a sense of dread and guilt wash over me. I did forget about her. Then the next witness is brought in, a man who is just sitting down to have some lunch. Oh no. Yet another witness comes in to tell everyone that after Chrono and Marley bumped into each other, Chrono grabbed her pendant before even checking to see if she was okay. Then it's time for the jury to vote, and after what I just watched, I knew that I would be ruled guilty. If I was in the jury, I would have voted guilty after hearing all that. Let me tell you that when I first played through this scene, I was genuinely stunned. All I could do was sit back and laugh at how well I had been duped by the game. Sure, maybe some players helped the little girl find her lost cat, but let's be honest, most of us grabbed the pendant first and swiped the old man's lunch. Years of gaming had conditioned us to loot anything in sight without a second thought. The developers knew this and decided to toy with the player, creating a moment that none of us would ever forget. Somehow, in a game full of insane set pieces all tied together by time travel, a literal courtroom trial manages to be one of Chrono Trigger's most iconic moments. Like I said, once you have lived through it once, you will never make those mistakes again. In fact, because of the way I handled the Millennial Fair in this playthrough, my trial went a little something like this.
I am not crazy. I know he kidnapped the princess. He got that little girl at the fair to lie for him. Are you telling me a man's lunch just happens to disappear like that? No! He orchestrated it! Chrono!
Now, to be honest, The events that happen next don't dramatically change the game. No matter the verdict, Chrono is still in prison, and the Chancellor proceeds with his plan to carry out the execution. The sequence plays out slightly differently depending on the outcome. If you're found guilty, Chrono's execution is carried out immediately, while a not guilty verdict buys you a few days before the Chancellor intervenes. That said, I don't think this takes away from the moment at all. The emotional weight of the trial doesn't come from the consequences of the verdict, but from the revelation that the game has been silently judging your actions all along. It forces the player to reflect on their choices, and it sets the tone for the rest of the adventure. This is a game where your actions, both big and small, matter. Following the trial, Chrono is set to be executed. One way or another, he breaks free with the aid of Luca before coming face to face with Guardia Castle's secret weapon, the Dragon Tank. After defeating the Dragon Tank, it explodes, leaving the Chancellor and two guards scrambling to hold each other across the broken bridge. Chrono and Luca literally must run across their backs to escape, and it's hilarious. A quick note, I love how unserious this game can be at times. It is not afraid to be ridiculous for the sake of being fun. That's something that I miss in modern games, maybe outside of the Yakuza series and most recently the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. Now there's nothing wrong with a super serious game, but I greatly appreciate and admire games like Chrono Trigger that manage to tell a compelling and mature story while also breaking the tension with outrageous scenes that simply put a smile on your face. Chrono and Luca are almost captured, but Marley instructs the guards to let them go. Conflicted, the guards stand down. Marley casts aside her role as a princess and escapes the castle with Chrono and Luca. They make their way further into the forest as guards chase them. In the forest, they find a gate. With no other option, they jump in and escape to another time.
Bruh.
The gang find themselves far into the future, in a world that seems unbelievably bleak. The overworld music does a great job in conveying this sense of hopelessness and emptiness. These feelings only expand when you find humans who have managed to survive in these conditions. They are broken down, dirty, and hungry. Inside Tran Dome, you find a machine called the Enertron. It's able to give someone a full night's sleep in a few seconds, but it still leaves you hungry. The Enertron immediately stood out to me when I first played Chrono Trigger, and it's something I can't seem to shake. In my current life, a device like this would be a dream come true. Imagine gaining 6 to 8 hours every day, less stress, more time for hobbies, and the ability to fully explore one's interests. But in this bleak, unforgiving world, the Enertron feels like a curse. These people are trapped in apocalyptic reality, unable to even escape through sleep. While the technology can restore physical energy, it can't replace the basic pleasure and nourishment of food, and every time you use it, you're reminded of that emptiness. It's a haunting symbol of how dire the future of this world is. This world is on the brink of collapse, and basic survival has become a hollow, unfulfilling existence. The party makes their way to Eris Dome to find another small group of survivors, seemingly led by an old man by the name of Dome. He mentions that there is food in the basement, but there are robot guards preventing their access. Another survivor mentions that their husband had ventured under the dome to retrieve food, but has not been seen since. We make our way through the basement before encountering the guardian robot Dome mentioned. After scrapping the foe, the party finds the storage room where unfortunately, the food has all spoiled. At the back of the room is the missing husband who is clutching onto humanity's last hope, a seed. Exploring 2300 AD for the first time is absolutely captivating. It's immediately clear that something catastrophic happened between our time and this future timeline. What makes this sequence so powerful is that it comes after having already explored 600 AD and 1000 AD. If we went straight from the Millennial Fair to the future, this would not hold nearly the same impact. While 600 and 1000 AD are distinct, you can still see the continuity between them. The world is recognizable in both periods. 600 AD carries a sense of unease with the war against the Great Magus, who we'll discuss later. But that tension is balanced by the knowledge that peace and prosperity await in 1000 AD. In the present, the world is thriving, full of life and growth, giving the player a sense of reassurance about its future. But now, stepping far into the future, we are confronted with a world that feels completely alien. Where there were once lush green fields, there are now barren wastelands, and the vibrancy of life has all but vanished. This sequence evokes a massive sense of intrigue. Naturally, the player is left to wonder, what possibly could have happened to this world that turned it into this? The introduction of Lavos is a genuine masterclass in storytelling. It effectively establishes the stakes for the overarching conflict and demonstrates the overwhelming destructive capabilities of Lavos. The party immediately knows that they must use their newfound gift of time travel to prevent this from happening, but how? The beauty of this moment lies in the overwhelming sense of helplessness it creates. The player knows the stakes. Lavos must be stopped, or else the world will be effectively destroyed, and humanity will be pushed to the brink of extinction. Yet, Lavos' introduction leaves you questioning how you'll ever accomplish such an impossible task. It's a brilliant moment that doesn't just tell you what's at stake. It makes you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, effectively motivating both the party and player to push forward on this journey. The party plans to return to their era in order to do some research on Lavos, but first, they must get to the gate in Protodome. There they find Robo, who is incredible and must be protected at all costs. To get to the gate, the dome's generator must be activated in a nearby factory, but this can only be accomplished with Robo's help. And since this is a JRPG, there is a limit to the number of people who can travel together at one time. So we leave either Marley or Luca behind to open the door once the generator is activated. Because I can't bring myself to separate Luca and Robo, I chose to leave Marley behind. The factory is a typical dungeon, but it does include a heartbreaking scene where Robo is reunited with his so-called friends.
How could this happen to me?
Robo is initially happy to see his friends, but they do not share his feelings. They claim that Robo is defective as he is not following his directive to eliminate all intruders. Chrono and Luca can only watch helplessly as Robo is beaten up by his former comrades. If you try to intervene, Robo will beg you to stop as he cries out that these robots are his brothers. It's painful to watch, but also admirable. Eventually, they've had their fill and they cast Robo aside. Robo refused to fight back, and he refused to let us hurt his friends. But look around you, blue knockoffs. Robo doesn't seem to be here anymore.
I'm in danger.
After the battle, Chrono and Luca drag Robo back to Protodome, where Luca can repair him once again. Robo then decides to join the party on their quest to save the world, and all I can say is, welcome aboard, you beautiful bucket of bolts. For now, there is nothing more to do in this era, so we go to the gate to return home. Except, we don't go home. We end up in a new place, the end of time. This location serves as the hub which connects us to the other time periods we will visit throughout the game. Here, we find an old man who explains that only 3 people can travel together at a time, and so, any other party members must stay here. Before continuing, we meet Specchio, who changes appearance based on how powerful your party is. It's a clever visual cue for showing your party's growth throughout the adventure. Specchio awakens the party's ability to use magic, but he does so by making you walk around the room, and I swear I mess this up every single time I play this. Back in the lobby, you may notice that there is a sparkling bucket. When you examine this, the old man reveals that the bucket is actually a gate that leads to the Day of Lavos in 1999 AD. He warns that we should only enter that gate if we are interested in shortening our lifespan.
Bro, are you
going to fight Lavos?
Yes, I am.
do you want to die?
Yes, I do.
Wait, what?
See ya.
We all did this, right? This is one of the coolest parts of Chrono Trigger. You can challenge Lavos, the final boss, at basically any point throughout your playthrough. Even cooler is that you will see a different ending depending on when in the story you beat Lavos. We will talk more about this later, but I love this mechanic. But at this point, our party is nowhere near the level it takes to defeat Lavos, and so, we die. But when you die in this fight, you don't get a simple game over. You get to see the day of Lavos in greater detail, and you are once again reminded of what will become of this planet if you fail to put an end to this apocalyptic threat. I love this scene, and I really love how it ends. Once we are ready to continue the story, we warp to Medina Village in 1000 AD, where our party falls out of a closet in a lovely couple's home. The Blue Imp warns the party that Medina Village will not be kind to them. This village was founded by the ancestors of the Mystics, who once lost a war to humans. Therefore, they are extremely prejudiced. For example, if you go to the market in Medina Village, you will first be attacked by the shopkeeper and his boss. When you win the battle, the shopkeeper reluctantly agrees to sell equipment to the party, but at a very, very high price. That said, we did just kinda kill his boss, so I get it. At the center of Medina Village lies Medina Square, and it's there that we see a group of monsters worshipping the statue of Magus, the one who commanded the Mystics in their war against humanity 400 years ago. One of the monsters refers to Lavos as Magus's creation, which raises a couple of questions. First of all, we have seen the power of Lavos. How could the Mystics lose a war to the humans if they were led by someone capable of summoning that power? Secondly, if we can go back and stop Magus from summoning Lavos, can we save the world? With this crucial information, we return to 600 AD, hoping to stop Magus from summoning Lavos. Upon arrival, we discover Guardia locked in a battle against his forces at Xenon Bridge. We are quick to join the fight and assist Guardia against this army of fiends. Leading the assault is Ozzy, Magus's right-hand man, who taunts us before sending a towering skeletal monstrosity called Zombor to fight us. Here's a quick aside about the PS1 version of this game. You may or may not know that the PS1 version has some anime cinematics in the style of Dragon Ball, since the great Akira Toriyama designed the characters for this game. In the opening cutscene, the battle on Xenon Bridge is recreated with Frog in your party, but it's impossible to have him with you at this point in the game. After the battle, we're free to explore the southern regions of the continent, where rumors abound of a legendary, metal-wearing hero and a weapon known as the Masamune, which is said to be hidden deep within the Denadoro Mountains. It seems our next lead is clear. In the Denadoro Mountains... Wait, is that Blanca?
Peekaboo!
We make our way through Blanca's and Crow Ninjas to find a sword sticking out of the ground, guarded by two creatures, Masa and Mune. Apart, they are fairly easy to defeat, but then they channel the power of Akira Toriyama. Fused together, these two are actually a pretty formidable foe. It was one of the tougher boss battles on this run. After the battle, we claim the Masamune, only to discover it's broken. Searching for clues, we head to the Cursed Woods in 600 AD, where we find Frog, who holds the other piece of the sword. According to Frog, the Masamune is the key to defeating Magus, meaning its repair is crucial to our mission. But how can we find someone with the skills required to repair such a powerful weapon? When examining the Masamune, Robo notices that there is something written on the blade in archaic script. It says, Rachlem. Wait, it's just backwards. The name is actually Melchior, who our party has ran into a couple times in this journey. He was at the Millennial Fair and he lives in Medina Village. Now this adds a whole new layer of mystery. How is Melchior connected to this legendary weapon in 600 AD? Well, let's go talk to him. We present him with the Masamune, and as expected, he's surprised to see it. Luca voices what we're all thinking. Why is his name engraved on the sword? Melchior hints at a long story, but he doesn't reveal much. However, he offers a solution. The Masamune can be repaired, but it requires Dreamstone, a material that hasn't existed for ages. While seemingly insignificant, I love that the game trusts the player to figure out the next step. The cutscene does not end with Luca turning to Chrono and saying,
Hey, listen!
let's go back in time to find some Dreamstone. The game leaves it up to us to have that aha moment. You might say that it's obvious what to do next, and yeah, maybe. But that doesn't stop some games from adding superfluous dialogue that tells you exactly what to do. Many modern games have this issue. Objectives are often over-explained with UI markers that spell out exactly where to go next. Now there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it does evoke the feeling of being led down a path rather than making a conscious choice of what to do next. Chrono Trigger provides a sense of agency which makes you feel like you're the one in control. This design is especially important in games with silent protagonists. Typically, the silent protagonist represents the player, but if the other characters are constantly telling you what to do, the protagonist starts to feel like an extra rather than the leader. In Chrono Trigger, Chrono genuinely feels like the leader because we feel like the leader. We are the ones deciphering clues and deciding how to move forward, and that empowers both Chrono as a silent protagonist and us as the player. Now, our objective is to get some Dreamstone, so we head back in time to 65 million BC and are quickly attacked by Reptites. Following the battle, we are greeted by a warrior by the name of Ayla, and do you remember how I mentioned Akira Toriyama designed the characters for this game? We ask Isla about Dreamstone, and she boasts that her village has many stones that we can have. Before we worry about the Dreamstone, however, Isla throws a prehistoric rager. Isla says that she has the Dreamstone, but the only way that she'll give it to us is if Chrono will beat her in a soup-chugging contest. And Chrono wins, but you can tell it's a struggle. I mean, look at that face. After a crazy night of partying, Chrono and crew wake up to find their belongings have been stolen, including the gate key, which means we are stuck in this era. We find out the thief is Isla's second-in-command, Kino. To put it bluntly, this dude is jealous of Chrono's aura. Isla punches Kino for his actions, to which Robo hilariously asks her not to promote violence. Unfortunately, the Reptites took everything from Kino, so we need to track them down to get our gate key back. This leads to a dungeon in which we find Azala, the leader of the Reptites. She demands to know about the gate key, and when we do not cooperate, she sends in Nizbel to fight us. We make quick work of him, and Azala just kinda returns the gate key to the party, but not without warning that the Reptites will one day rule the world. Since there is a noticeable lack of green lizard people in the other time periods, I have a feeling that Azala may be wrong about this. With both the Dreamstone and gate key in hand, we return to Melchior and ask him and Luca to work together to reforge the Masamune. When we return the Masamune to Frog, we are treated to an incredible cutscene that highlights his tragic backstory. Frog, originally known as Glenn, was a close friend and squire to the heroic knight Cyrus. Together, they sought to retrieve the hero's medal from the Frog King, and Cyrus had aspirations of finding the legendary Masamune. They accomplished their goal, but right after, they were ambushed by Magus and Ozzy. In the battle, Cyrus was killed by Magus, and Glenn was cursed, transforming him into his current form. Haunted by his inability to save Cyrus and ashamed of his transformation, Frog has lived in seclusion ever since. This flashback highlights his deep sense of guilt and failure, but with the Masamune in his hands, Frog is determined to honor Cyrus's legacy and confront Magus. In just a 4-minute cutscene, Chrono Trigger manages to make you care deeply for Frog, instantly making you sympathize with and understand his plight against Magus. This scene highlights one of Chrono Trigger's greatest and arguably most important strength: pacing. The game doesn't stretch this sequence into an hour-long interactive flashback where Glenn runs errands for Cyrus before the tragic finale. Instead, it delivers all the emotion, backstory, and motivation in a concise, impactful way. But wait, it doesn't stop there. On our way to confront Magus, we arrive at Magic Cave, where a rock formation stands in front of us. Frog thinks back to different moments in his life. He remembers Cyrus's words after Cyrus protected him from bullies as a child. Glenn, there are times when people simply have to grit their teeth. He thinks back to when Cyrus first talked about becoming a knight, even encouraging Glenn to follow in his footsteps. Then finally, he remembers Cyrus's death and the moments following his transformation. While lying on the ground, something washes up on the shore next to him, the hero's medal, as if Cyrus himself was passing his legacy onto Glenn. With his resolve reignited, Frog asks Chrono for the Masamune. Reclaiming his identity as Glenn, he vows to slay Magus in Cyrus's honor. Lifting the legendary blade, he channels a beam of energy into the sky. And in one powerful strike, Frog cleaves the rock face in two, revealing the entrance to the cave leading to Magus's lair. Wow. There really isn't anything I can add here. The sequence from Frog's first flashback to him unlocking the power of the Masamune is nothing short of perfect. But somehow, Chrono Trigger isn't done. The great moments just keep coming, because next up is the castle of the great Magus himself. The music appropriately sets the tone, and it also sets up for an incredible payoff in the battle with Magus, but we will touch on that later. I appreciate how the eerie music persists even when engaging in battle. It perpetuates the feeling of unease and mystery of this place. Inside the castle, we find a room that has familiar faces. The people who appear in this room are important to those in the active party, so, depending on who you bring, you will see different people. Chrono and Luca both see their respective mothers. Marley sees her father. Frog sees Queen Lean, and Robo sees Luca, which is so lovely and shows how he truly cherishes her friendship. This is a clever way to further develop and define our characters while also elevating the sense of unease that pervades Magus's castle. Throughout this dungeon, we must fight Magus's henchmen, Flea/Ozzy, and yeah, if you know, you know. We can quickly find Slash and Flea by exploring both sides of the castle, but Ozzy makes it particularly difficult to reach him. While pursuing Ozzy, the party steps into his trap and he drops you into a dungeon where a fearsome enemy lurks, one that controls the very fabric of time in this universe. With enough persistence, we reach Ozzy, but he encapsulates himself in an unbreakable barrier. In a clever battle, you will quickly realize that attacking Ozzy does nothing, but each time you attack him, he says, "What are you aiming at, you fool?" This is the game telling you to look for something else to attack. By aiming an attack at each of the cranks in the room, we give Ozzy a taste of his own medicine, dropping him into the pits of the castle. With the henchmen out of the way, there is nothing left to do but find Magus himself. Chrono Trigger relishes this moment, and it sets the stage for an epic battle with this legendary villain we have heard so much about. Frog and Magus share some words as a familiar theme kicks in, one that sounds exactly the same as the one we heard when we first stumbled upon Magus's lair. We step forward to confront Magus, who ominously says, "The black wind begins to blow." He turns around to accept the challenge of the party. Suddenly, the once ominous theme explodes into a thunderous theme that feels appropriate for a battle that could determine the fate of the world. Seriously, this soundtrack is unbelievable, and the fight with Magus lives up to his reputation. He is a difficult boss, and if you are unprepared, you will fall victim to his powerful magic attacks. With the help of Frog's Masamune, however, we manage to defeat him. But before we can celebrate, Lavos begins to awaken, much to our party's surprise. According to Robo, Lavos was born at this precise moment in time, but Magus reveals that he is not creating Lavos, he is summoning him to this location. Lavos lives in the inner earth, absorbing the power of the planet. The surge of power causes a massive gate to open, drawing the party inside as Lavos' scream echoes out. The party awakens in Isla's home in 65 million BC, where Magus is nowhere to be found. Isla encourages the party to rest for now instead of worrying about Magus or Lavos, and for now we have no other choice. Our rest quickly comes to an end as Isla's people are attacked by reptiles. Naturally, Isla is preparing to go to the Chrono lair, the home of the reptiles, to end this conflict once and for all, and with no current leads on Lavos, we decide the best thing to do is to help a friend in need. The only way to reach Chrono lair is by riding a dactyl, so we follow Isla to the top of the dactyl nest to catch a ride. As we lift off the ground, we see an ominous red sparkle in the sky. I'm sure it's nothing. We make our way through Chrono lair, saving Isla's people along the way. At the top, we confront Azala again. She says that today will mark the end of their war with each other, as this battle will decide who will rule the planet once and for all. Of course, 3 versus 1 is not really a fair fight, so Azala decides to even the playing field by bringing forth a massive Tyrannosaurus Rex to fight us. Even with the colossal creature on her side, we manage to defeat Azala. In her final moments, she reflects on the reptile's fate, questioning whether the heavens truly sided with the apes. She then makes a last request, that history remembers the reptiles as warriors who fought bravely to the bitter end. Isla promises, but suddenly the screen flashes red. Azala laughs ominously, warning us that true destruction is imminent, that an ice age will soon claim the land for eons to come. But why? As you may have guessed, the answer is Lavos. In this world, Lavos is the meteor that crashes into Earth, triggering the extinction of the dinosaurs and bringing on the Ice Age. This is such a cool narrative twist that kind of plays with our real history in life, and it continues to build up Lavos as this otherworldly threat that we have no chance in standing against. Once again, we are helpless to watch as Lavos causes unfathomable destruction of the world we are desperate to save. We quickly rush to the crater Lavos created to confront it, but Lavos is already deep underground by the time we arrive. In his place, however, there is a gate. Entering this gate leads to my personal favorite section of the game, 12,000 BC. We emerge from the cave to find ourselves in the midst of the Ice Age that Azala had warned us about. The howling wind is the only sound as we make our way through the bleak, desolate landscape. It feels empty, but with enough exploration, we spot a structure that seems unusually advanced. More advanced than anything from our era, which is well into the future. Inside, we find a small room with a strange mechanism on the floor. Stepping onto it, our party is suddenly beamed into the sky, taking us to the greatest location in this game, the Eternal Kingdom of Zeal. The Kingdom of Zeal is a location with so much mystery, so much intrigue that you are desperate to search every nook and cranny to learn more about this place and its inhabitants. Through conversations, you begin to paint a picture of this kingdom. The Kingdom of Zeal rose to prominence after mankind discovered magic. Their leader, Queen Zeal, nurtured this magic to help bring this kingdom to new heights. To escape the disastrous conditions of Earth, this society used magic to lift their kingdom high into the sky. However, not all were fortunate enough to make this journey. The inhabitants of the kingdom are all capable magic users. Those that couldn't wield magic were forced to remain on land. They are referred to as the Earthbound ones.
Okay.
It quickly becomes clear that this kingdom is prejudiced and hateful towards the Earthbound ones, seeing them as lesser. The kingdom is drunk on its very impressive power. While exploring the kingdom, we find a young boy with striking blue hair, followed by his loyal cat. When we try to talk to him, he walks away, but not before giving an ominous message. The black wind howls. One among you will shortly perish. Another layer of mystery is added, and we wonder just how true his words could really be. And also, that sounds a lot like something another blue-haired guy might say. The Kingdom of Zeal is a paradise of wonder and mystery, and I can't overstate just how captivating it is to explore. The world building here is rich and meticulous. Each character's dialogue hints at Zeal's history, its magic, and the enigmatic Queen Zeal. You hear rumblings about a prophet who mysteriously appeared and has been serving the Queen. You learn about the Queen's children, Shala and Janice, who are said to have a close bond. You can talk to scholars who are fascinated by various things of intrigue, such as the Sunstone and the Mammon Machine, which draws power from Lavos itself to power the kingdom. And then you learn about the Ocean Palace, a place deep beneath the waves that the Queen wants to use to get closer to Lavos in order to further amplify the kingdom's power. The more you uncover, the more you realize that the beauty of Zeal comes at a terrible cost, and you can feel that the thirst for power will lead to disastrous consequences. So now, we have another possible lead to stopping Lavos. Stop Queen Zeal. Exploring this kingdom is so rewarding, not just for the sense of immersion in a world that feels alive with its own ambitions, fears, and secrets, but also because you could find some neat treasures here by completing some puzzles. The developers knew this place would inspire curiosity, and that curiosity is rewarded in so many meaningful ways. Oh, we also get the greatest dialogue ever seen in any form of media ever. Am I a butterfly dreaming I'm a man? Or a bowling ball dreaming I'm a plate of sashimi? Never assume that what you see and feel is real.
See you, chump.
Huh?
In Zeal's palace, we witness an intimate moment between Shala and Janice. Janice seems deeply disturbed, sensing that something ominous is on the horizon. Shala tries to comfort him, and as a token of her love and protection, gives him her pendant, one that just so happens to look like Marley's. The moment comes to a quick end, however, as Shala's presence is requested by the Queen. This scene shows a deep bond between the two. Shala clearly cares deeply for Janice, but at the same time, she feels bound by a sense of duty to their mother, Queen Zeal. Janice, on the other hand, only cares for Shala's safety. He senses that their mother has been corrupted by her pursuit of power and fears what may happen to Shala if she continues to serve her. Also, the exchange of Shala's medal, which will one day be given to Marley, clearly indicates that Shala and Janice are central to the overarching plot, although their role is yet to be revealed. We try to follow Shala, but are soon blocked by a very familiar door. We learn that Shala's pendant is capable of opening the door, and while we have her pendant, it appears to have lost the power it once had. Turns out, the power of the pendant is from Lavos itself, so we bring our pendant to the Mammon Machine to recharge it. This not only allows us to follow Shala and continue the story, but it also allows us to unlock previously unopenable doors and treasure chests, which makes late game exploration really rewarding. And seriously, the rewards you get for opening these doors and chests are ridiculously good. We use our pendant to open the door to the throne room, and we come face to face with Queen Zeal, Princess Shala, some schmuck named Dalton, and a mysterious blue-haired prophet. It turns out that the prophet had already warned the Queen about us, and the Queen is not happy to see us at all. She orders Dalton to deal with us, and he summons a monster which quickly defeats the party, leading to their imprisonment. Our time in captivity is short-lived, however, as we are quickly freed by Shala. She instructs us to flee the palace and rescue none other than Melchior, the person who helped us reforge the Masamune in 1000 AD. Before we have a chance to leave, however, the prophet enters the room and threatens to kill us. Shala, along with Janus and his cat, begs the prophet to stop. Almost instantly, the prophet changes his mind and agrees to spare us, on the condition that Shala does as he asks. He then asks us to show him how he came here. Without any other option, we take him to the gate that brought us to this era, and he instructs us to leave. He forces Shala to close the gate behind us so we cannot return. But of course, we need to return. How? Well, Luca knows that with our charged up pendant we can access locations previously thought inaccessible, and so we do this in hopes that we find something useful. This leads us to Keeper's Dome in 2300 AD. Inside, we use our pendant to open the sealed crest door. We find notes left by Balthazar, the guru of reason who once lived in the Kingdom of Zeal. He talks about how a disaster in Zeal led him to this era, where he was surprised to learn that Lavos still existed. He mentions that Lavos disappeared briefly when he was summoned away by a mighty wizard in 600 AD. Balthazar references how Lavos claims the planet in 1999 AD and reigns from the top of Death Peak. Forced to live in 2300 AD, Balthazar continues to research Lavos in hopes that he can find a way to conquer the creature. One note states that in order to beat Lavos, we must master time itself. And with that idea in mind, Balthazar develops one last invention, one that will be integral in defeating Lavos, a time machine. We find the time machine, although we are unsure how to use it. On cue, Anu walks into the room and it's revealed that Balthazar copied his memory into the creature. He explains how to work the time machine, and then we assign it the name Epoch. We hop in and make our way back to 12,000 BC to go to floating Mount Woe, where according to Shala, Melchior is being held. We climb our way to the top of the mountain, where we find that Melchior has been imprisoned in crystal. Before we can free him, we are attacked by Giga Gaia, and after an intense, hard-fought battle, we lose. Okay, these bosses are getting serious. There's no other option but to bring out the top-tier strategies.
Stop. What do you mean by that?
Following the battle, we are reunited with our familiar swordsmith, but he does not recognize us. Melchior explains that Queen Zeal has been corrupted by the power of Lavos and must be stopped at all costs. Our conversation is short-lived as the mountain begins to fall back down to earth. Luckily, our party is unscathed. In the following scene, Melchior explains to the party that Queen Zeal's plan to bring the Mammon Machine closer to Lavos may awaken the terrifying creature. Melchior is adamant that we must stop her before it's too late. Princess Shala arrives and demonstrates her kind heart as she refuses to allow the Earthbound ones denigrate themselves in her presence. In fact, she sees the Earthbound ones as the smart ones as opposed to the ones in the Kingdom of Zeal who are under the control of Lavos. Janus, on the other hand... Shala informs us that the Ocean Palace is now operational, which means the Mammon Machine will be activated soon. However, without Shala, the device is useless. She has turned her back on the Kingdom of Zeal and she begs us to stop her mother before it's too late. Unfortunately, Shala will be brought to that machine one way or another. Dalton breaks up the little party and kidnaps Shala to bring to the Queen. Time is of the utmost importance now. Melchior warns us that if the Queen's plan is successful, the world as we know it will come to an end. He provides us with a weapon made of the same red stone that the Mammon Machine is made of, the Ruby Knife. With the Ruby Knife in hand, we hurry to confront Queen Zeal in hopes of ending this conflict once and for all. Blocking our path is none other than Dalton, who has been relegated to guard duty while the Queen brings the mysterious prophet with her to the machine. We make quick work of Dalton, but he is able to flee into the Ocean Palace before we can finish him off. The tension continues to rise as we get a glimpse of what is happening deep within the Ocean Palace. Queen Zeal, driven completely mad by Lavos' power, forces Shala to activate the Mammon Machine. Clearly, using her abilities is quite taxing on Shala, which noticeably affects the mysterious prophet, although he remains silent. Now, we must conquer the Ocean Palace to reach the Queen before her plan comes to fruition. This dungeon is an excellent finale to Act 2, and it's accompanied with an intense theme that appropriately matches the intensity of the situation. Eventually, we reach the sanctum of the Mammon Machine, prepared to stop the Queen's plan. Shala, having used so much power to operate the machine, is weakened. The Queen urges her to continue, but Shala falls to the ground. This gives Chrono the opportunity to use the ruby knife on the Mammon Machine. It pierces the device, and it's revealed that the ruby knife is in fact the Masamune. Unfortunately, not even the Masamune is powerful enough to stop what is coming. With its signature shriek, Lavos awakens. Our party steps forward to battle against the creature, but we are quickly defeated. Then the Prophet appears and reveals himself to be none other than Magus!
No way! I can't believe this!
Magus steps forth to challenge Lavos before Queen Zeal appears, laughing at the prospect of him fighting against the great creature. She remarks that he will simply be a snack for Lavos. Shala begs the Queen to stop, but it's of no use. The Queen joins with Lavos, who immediately begins to drain Magus of his powers. Magus stands slowly, claiming that he survived the darkness to defeat Lavos. He puts all of his might into a strike, but Lavos is completely unfazed. Lavos strikes back and Magus is rendered useless. All hope is lost. Our party is on the ground in the face of the world-ending threat. We have no chance. But that doesn't mean we won't fight to the end. Chrono stands. Shala begs him to run away, but that's just not who Chrono is. We have seen time and time again that he is someone who will put himself at risk to save others. In fact, we were shown this at the very beginning of the game when Chrono blindly traveled through time to save Marley. And now, in front of Lavos, Chrono readies his blade to protect his friends once more. Lavos prepares to attack. Our party members implore for Chrono to stand down and get away, but Chrono remains steadfast. And then, the unthinkable happens. Chrono dies. The palace begins to crumble, and with no other options, Shala uses her pendant's remaining power to send Magus and our party to safety, although she is forced to remain behind. Then we are helpless to watch as Lavos awakens and unleashes his destructive fury, bringing the Kingdom of Zeal crashing down to the earth. This is easily my favorite scene from the game. First of all, this moment solidifies Magus as possibly the best character in Chrono Trigger. He is certainly the most complex, and it all becomes abundantly clear as he steps forward to face Lavos. In 600 AD, Magus was not summoning Lavos to wreak havoc on the world. No, he wanted to summon Lavos to 600 AD so that he could fight it. While Magus is certainly no good guy, it's clear that he isn't as evil as we may have once believed. But why does Magus hold such a grudge against Lavos? He does not seem to care for Queen Zeal, so it doesn't make sense that he would go through so much trouble and risk for her sake. No, there is only one person in this world who has a hold over Magus: Princess Shala. And maybe his cat. Because of Lavos, Magus lost his sister. Driven by hatred and rage, Magus went down a path of evil, one that ultimately led to his death by the hand of Lavos in the original timeline. Magus is truly a fascinating character, and there is a reason he is a fan favorite to this day. And depending on the choices we make, his story may just continue. But we will get to that. The Ocean Palace disaster is not only incredible because of Magus's reveal, but it's because the game makes the bold choice to kill Chrono. Again, Chrono is a silent protagonist. He is a stand-in for the player, and we see him disintegrate in front of our eyes. We are left in a state of shock, wondering how we are supposed to continue forward without him. Now, we can actually bring Chrono back to life, and some people may argue that the ability to resurrect Chrono removes the weight of this moment, but I completely disagree. This is different from the typical character dies, except not really, that we have seen elsewhere. This moment is different for a couple of reasons. For one, it makes sense thematically. This is a story about time travel, and using time travel to cheat death is a staple of these kinds of stories. When the option presents itself, it feels natural within the context of the story that has been told to this point. Secondly, bringing Chrono back to life is completely optional. Don't get me wrong, the game strongly pushes you in the direction of bringing him back, but it's not necessary. Once again, the game gives us the choice on how to proceed. And of course, we will choose to bring back our friend, and we will get to that later as well. Following Lavos' attack, our party wakes up in a tent after being rescued by the Earthbound Elder. We can talk to some other survivors, but there is no time for rest as Dalton arrives at the camp. He mentions the Epoch and how he will modify it to be his personal chariot. Dalton manages to subdue our party, and he brings us into captivity aboard his airship, the Blackbird, where we are stripped of all of our money, items, and equipment. What follows is a stealth segment where we find our missing inventory. I am very indifferent on stealth sections in games, and this one is fine. The stealth is very bare bones as you would expect from games of this era. This section does provide some hilarious moments, however. For example, after some sneaking, I found Luca's equipment. In this portion of the game, only party members with equipment can participate in battle. So when I would get caught sneaking around, or I needed to battle enemies to open a treasure chest, it was all on Luca as Marley and Frog just sat there watching.
Help! Help! Help me! Help!
Eventually, we retrieve our missing inventory and make our way to the top of the Blackbird where we have to face another one of Dalton's monsters. We lay into him with our most powerful attacks as he begins an ominous countdown, surely preparing to annihilate the party with a devastating attack. The countdown gets to 1, and then we brace ourselves. This section provides some much needed levity after the intense dark events at the Ocean Palace. I genuinely appreciate how Chrono Trigger balances these elements in such a way where neither feels out of place. The dark moments deeply resonate with me, and the light moments manage to put a smile on my face. After the Golem Boss runs away, we see that Dalton has managed to modify the Epoch to make it fly. He then breaks the fourth wall in a hilarious manner. No, 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 no! Stop the music! Ha! There we go. Refusing to let him take what is rightfully ours, we jump onto the Epoch and battle Dalton for the final time. Dalton attempts to summon the Golem Boss, but his attempt is unsuccessful and he is drawn into the portal he opens. Luckily for us, we will never see Dalton ever again. The party is in high spirits after reclaiming the Epoch, but Marley reminds us all of who we have lost. But she hasn't completely lost hope. She believes that Chrono is out there somewhere, waiting for us to rescue him. Before we fully commit to the hunt for Chrono, there was someone else we needed to talk to first. Magus. Magus reveals what originally happened in the Ocean Palace before our party changed the timeline. We see Queen Zeal successfully activating the Mammon Machine in the presence of Shala, Janus, and the 3 Gurus. When Lavos is awakened, the immense power opens several gates through time. Melchior ends up at 1000 AD in Medina Village. Beltazar is sent to 2300 AD, and then it's revealed that the 3rd Guru, Gaspar, is sent to the end of time, meaning he's the old man who has been assisting us in our journey. Lastly, Janus is brought to 600 AD, where he is taken in by Ozzy, eventually becoming the great and powerful Magus. Magus remarks that nothing could have prepared him for this. He didn't realize the extent of Lavos' power, and he suggests that anyone who stands against Lavos will end up like Chrono. Of course, this sparks the ire of Frog, who draws his sword, ready to finally vanquish the foe who has caused such tremendous pain in his life. Magus then asks, "You wish to fight me?" Here's how I personally interpret this moment. Magus has come to the realization that he cannot accomplish his life goal. Lavos is simply too powerful, and he witnessed that power firsthand. Simply put, he has lost his will to continue. I think Magus wants the party to kill him, ending the suffering he has felt since being separated from Shala as a child. I also think that Frog realizes this. That said, it's up to you. Once again, Chrono Trigger gives the player the complete agency in this journey. Do you spare Magus, or do you give Frog his revenge and slay Magus? There is no right answer, as this is your journey, and that's the beauty of this game. For me personally, I think Frog sees through Magus here. I also think Frog's opinion of Magus may have slightly changed after learning more about his past and motivation. Now don't get me wrong, I don't believe that Frog likes Magus. At the end of the day, Magus killed Frog's best friend, and there isn't anything that will change that. But on this day, Frog doesn't see the powerful fiend that killed his best friend. He sees a broken man whose future was shaped the moment his mother discovered the power of Lavos. I believe that in this moment, Frog realizes that exacting his revenge will not bring relief, and he chooses to spare Magus. Magus then offers to join the party, and he also suggests that there may be a way to bring Chrono back. He knows that there is one person who could possibly help in this predicament, the Guru of Time, Gaspar. But who cares about that right now? There's someone important that Magus needs to see. Words cannot describe how much I love this detail. Anyway, when we board the Epoch to return to the end of time, we are interrupted by a scene that shows a palace materialize over the ocean. The Ocean Palace has risen and become the Black Omen, the game's final dungeon, should you choose to do it. For now, we need to focus on getting Chrono back. At the end of time, Gaspar is saddened to hear that Chrono is passed, but apparently he was prepared because he has a jukebox ready to give us a gift. Memories of Chrono. The song is sweet, but I can't help but laugh at this moment. Just imagine that your friend and comrade died, and some guy pulls out his iPod to play his newest track in honor of your friend. I'm gonna need a link to this guy's SoundCloud. We asked the old man for his help in bringing Chrono back, and his response is genuinely beautiful. To bring back lost loved ones, it's what everyone wants. Chrono must be proud to have friends like you. If you try to leave the end of time, Gaspar does offer one final Hail Mary. He can't guarantee anything, but he says there is a chance with this device, the Chrono Trigger.
He said it! He said it!
Frog says it appears to be an egg, to which Gaspar agrees. Like an egg, it represents potential. It may or may not hatch. The egg will have an effect equal to the effort we put into our search. No more, no less. He suggests that we talk with the one who built the epoch to discover how to hatch it. So we travel to 2300 AD to speak with Balthazar, and he mentions that two things are necessary to bring someone back to life. 1. The person must be important to the space-time continuum. And 2. We must have a clone identical to that person. So naturally, we go play some carnival games and win a doll that is identical to Chrono. Score! Next, we have to climb to the top of Death Peak, which, as the name suggests, isn't the friendliest of places. At the top of the mountain, the Chrono Trigger begins reacting to Marley's pendant before rising into the air and shattering. Nothing seems to happen at first, and our party faces the reality that they may not be able to change fate. However, a dark shadow envelops the moon, and we are brought to the very moment in time where Chrono was killed by Lavos. We replace Chrono's body with the doll, and then we are returned to Death Peak, where Chrono indeed has been returned to us. The emotional reunion between Chrono and the party feels genuine and earned. In some games, it's hard to understand why the party loves the silent protagonist, but throughout this story, Chrono's actions have spoke louder than any words ever could. He has proven his love and loyalty to this group of people time and time again, and that's why in return, this group would rewrite history to ensure he returns safely. With Chrono back, we are ready to tackle the end game. The only thing required left to do is defeat Lavos, but at this point, the game opens up with several side quests we can complete to further strengthen our party before the final battle. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of side quests. Let me rephrase that. I'm not a huge fan of boring side quests, which unfortunately are a majority of them. With that said, Chrono Trigger generally takes a quality over quantity approach to its side quests. Each party member, including Magus, has a side quest to complete. We have already talked about Chrono and Lucas, although there is another side quest where Luca really shines that we will get to. Otherwise, let's hop into these quests one character at a time. Let's start with Isla, whose quest is by far the weakest of the bunch. Ironically, it's also the one that mirrors most modern side quests. Isla speaks of a strong defense item that her village has. To get this item, you have to go to the hunting grounds near her village and grind fights until you have the materials necessary to trade for the armor. That's it. Of the side quests in this game, Isla's is the least imaginative, and it doesn't offer anything of note to Isla's character. Next. Going to Guardia Castle with Marley in 1000 AD leads to some scenes that highlight the tension between Marley and her father. The Chancellor talks about how the king worked tirelessly while Marley's mother was sick, even going as far to suggest that the king indirectly killed her by neglect. When we talk to the king, he chastises Marley for her actions since the trial. He states that Marley's friends are a disgrace to this kingdom, and I mean, come on dude, what did we do to catch strays like this? Either way, Marley and the king get into a screaming match that ends with the king disowning Marley. Ouch. For now, Marley needs to distract herself from her family problems. Luckily, there are rumors of a legendary object in the Middle Ages that sparkles like a rainbow. Let's go to 600 AD and see what we can find. At a bar in Chorus, we find the adventurer Toma, who just so happens to be looking for the rainbow shell. He gives us a soda, asking us to pour it on his grave if he is unable to retrieve this shell. Spoilers, he's unable to retrieve it. In 1000 AD, we pour the soda on his grave, and Toma's ghost appears, informing us that the rainbow shell is on a large island called Giant's Claw. We return to 600 AD to check out the location. Inside, we find ourselves in the Chrono lair, where we defeated Azala in 65 million BC. Fittingly, making our way through the lair brings us to a fight against the Rust Tyranno. We dispatch the beast for good and find the fabled rainbow shell. Quick side note, this so-called legendary adventurer Toma spent his whole life searching for something that we found in about 5 minutes. Granted, he can't do this. Anyway, the shell is too heavy to move, so we enlist the help of Marley's ancestor, King Guardia. The king immediately agrees to store the rainbow shell deep within the castle as a national treasure. When we return to 1000 AD to get the shell, we find the kingdom is in disarray as the king, Marley's father, is being held on trial. He has been accused of selling the royal treasures to line his own pockets. The chancellor claims that the king sold the rainbow shell, which, according to castle records, should be held deep within the castle. The king is completely blindsided by these accusations and claims the chancellor is attempting to frame him. To prove his innocence, we must prove that the rainbow shell indeed resides within the castle. When we try to make our way to the shell, we are attacked by the same enemies that we fought in the cathedral in 600 AD when we were attempting to rescue Queen Lean. That's interesting. The monsters are the same strength as they were back then, which means that by now, our party has zero trouble with them. As we are obtaining the evidence, the Chancellor brings in character witnesses who argue that the king is corrupt and more than willing to sell national treasures for personal gain. All I gotta say is that this country's court system needs some overhauling. We return to the courtroom with a shard from the rainbow shell, proving the king's innocence and thwarting the Chancellor's plan to claim Guardia's power. This leads the Chancellor to enact his plan B. Do you remember the fake Chancellor back in 600 AD, Yakra? Well, it turns out that his descendants know how to hold a familial grudge, as the Chancellor reveals himself actually to be Yakra the 13th. He is a lot tougher than his predecessor, but he is still no match for us, and we defeat him, returning order to the kingdom. The king thanks Marley and the two reconcile. He apologizes for his stubbornness, and the two grow closer together. In fact, the king reveals that he heard Marley's mother's last words, which contradicts the story Marley heard from the fake Chancellor. It turns out that the king was a loving husband after all, and this helps to mend the relationship between Marley and her father. In the following scene, the king allows Marley to leave the castle on the condition that she is careful. Melchior then walks in and promises to make some equipment from the rainbow shell, thus bringing this quest to an end. Oh wait, don't forget to free the real Chancellor from the treasure chest. I appreciate Marley's side quest for revisiting Tyranno Lair, and also the hilarious idea that the Yakra family line has held a grudge against Guardia since 600 AD. The scenes between Marley and her father are honestly nothing too special, but they serve their purpose. Marley and her father have mended their relationship, and these scenes also hint that Marley may not turn her back on the royal life after all. Overall, a solid side quest. Robo's side quest tackles the origin of machines. This brings us to Genodome in 2300 AD. This side quest is not nearly as involved as Marley's, as this is only a single dungeon in one era of time. That said, it has a couple of neat moments. First of all, Robo has to be the leader of the party to gain access to the dome. The computer greets Robo with his serial number and disparages him for bringing humans to this place. Consistent with our first stop in 2300 AD, Robo is shown to be an anomaly among the machines, as all other machines want to kill humans. In the dome, Robo is confronted by a robot from his past, Atropos. With careful analysis and deductive reasoning, we can make the determination that Atropos is a girl robot. She reveals that Robo's original mission was to live with humans and study them to aid the robots in bringing about the extinction of the human race. She offers Robo a chance to return to his place among his fellow robots, but of course, he fights back, realizing that humanity is not the enemy. Robo engages in fisticuffs with his former friend to protect our party. Following the battle, Atropos' personality seems to change, suggesting that the mother of their species must have tampered with her. Before she completely breaks down, she gives Robo her ribbon to remember her by. Eventually, we come face to face with the mother of all robots. But, like, literally. This is Mother Brain, and she beckons for Robo to return to her side, but he refuses. Robo gives a speech on how his new friends have changed him for the better. Because of his time with humanity, Robo has developed into a complex being, and in some ways, he is more human than robot. We defeat Mother Brain, and Robo takes the opportunity to shut down the factory for good, fully accepting his turn to humanity. Now, this is nothing new for Robo. From the beginning, it has been clear that he values the party as friends. That said, this is a nice moment for Robo to completely close the book on his past and send the message that change is possible at any point of one's life. It's a nice message that is communicated effectively in this quest. When we interrupted Magus' summoning of Lavos in 600 AD, we affected the future. In fact, in 1000 AD, where a statue of Magus once stood, there is now a statue of Ozzy. Magus remarks that Ozzy had a castle as well. Maybe we should pay him a visit. When we arrive at Ozzy's castle in 600 AD, he is shocked to see Magus still standing. He chastises Magus for abandoning the mystics to walk alongside humans. We chase Ozzy deeper into the castle, once again encountering Flea and Slash. On their own, they really aren't too hard, but when they are together, they can seriously wreck your party. In fact, during the playthrough for this video, I died in this battle, and then I had to re-experience the true horror of gaming in this era: the lack of an autosave. If you have been gaming for long enough, you know the feeling. Everyone's HP goes to 0, and initially, you're a bit upset that you lost the battle. But then, the title screen appears, and you start to wonder, when did I last save my game? And at this point, you know the answer. You haven't saved in a long time, but you hold on to the hope that you did and just forgot about it. I reloaded my game and realized that I had lost roughly an hour and a half of progress. Now, this was crushing as a kid, but let me tell you that this feeling is much worse as an adult. I had to sit the controller down and just stare blankly at the screen for a while. Eventually, I worked my way back and was able to conquer the trio. Ozzy attempts to flee once again, but we corner him. He encases himself in crystal, and we are left to attack the switches behind him. Of course, I hit the wrong one, which activates a trapdoor, but we quickly return to Ozzy with little effort. We prepare to battle once again, but suddenly, a cat walks in and triggers a switch which opens a trapdoor under Ozzy, ending the conflict once and for all. Once again, Chrono Trigger is not afraid to have a sense of humor. Defeating Ozzy sends another ripple effect throughout the timeline. By defeating Ozzy, we end the conflict between the humans and the mystics. Returning to Medina Village in 1000 AD, we find that humans and mystics live in harmony. Now, this quest doesn't really do anything for Magus, which makes sense because Magus' presence in the endgame is entirely dependent on our choice to spare him or not. I am glad they included dialogue in the case that Magus is present. Otherwise, the quest is another fun encounter with Ozzy, who tries to avoid battle at all costs. The dungeon is a fun callback to Magus' castle, and the boss battle against Ozzy, Flea, and Slash is a nice challenge. I also love how this quest resolves a war between the humans and the mystics, which brings peace to Medina Village. You can also check in on Ozzy's descendant, which is a nice finishing touch to a solid quest. At the end of time, Gaspar speaks of the ghost of a lofty knight slain by Magus in the Middle Ages. Upon hearing this, Frog knows that the ghost must be Cyrus. Now, Frog's entire character revolves around the tragedy of Cyrus's death at the hands of Magus, and this side quest allows Frog to truly come to peace about Cyrus's fate. To get into the castle where Cyrus's ghost is, we must complete a little time travel puzzle involving missing tools. Once we find some tools, we give them to a carpenter and his team so they can repair the castle. They agree to help, but we need to clear fiends out so they can make the repairs. We clear out the fiends in the area we can explore, the carpenter and his team make some repairs, more fiends appear, and we repeat this loop until the castle is fully explorable. At the bottom of the castle is a grave. Frog approaches and reads the engraving. It says, "Cyrus, the fool who challenged Magus, rests here." Now, I don't think this is meant to be taken literally, as we will soon see. Instead, this is meant to reflect the guilt that Frog feels over Cyrus's death. Frog raises the Masamune in front of the grave, promising to fulfill his promise to protect the queen. Suddenly, Cyrus's ghost rises from the grave. Frog expresses his guilt to Cyrus, but Cyrus is quick to comfort his friend. In this moment, Cyrus expresses his gratitude for Glenn and explains how he can finally rest knowing that the people he left behind in death are in Glenn's more than capable hands. Cyrus says his final goodbye, and Frog allows himself to both fully mourn the loss of his friend, while also completely embracing the promise he once made. This inner realization allows Frog to channel the full power of the Masamune, and in a fantastic moment, Frog states, "'Tis a sad farewell. Onward all." No longer is Frog bound to his tragic past. Frog chooses instead to march forward and carry Cyrus's legacy with him as he fights to protect his loved ones. This is such an epic ending to Frog's arc. I love it. To perfectly cap it off, the engraving on Cyrus's grave has changed, reflecting the change within Frog. It now says, "Cyrus sleeps here, avenged by his friend Glenn." The changing of the grave is poignant, but it does contribute to a complaint that I have about this quest. Now you see, the side quest at Ozzy's fort has additional dialogue that triggers as Magus is in the party, but the Frog's side quest does not. I did not have Magus with me when I completed this quest, but from what I understand, having Magus in the party does not change anything. Cyrus does not acknowledge Magus' presence, and the engraving on the tombstone states that Glenn avenged Cyrus, regardless of whether you spared Magus or not. This is obviously not a deal breaker, as Frog's story is more about accepting loss and choosing to move forward, but Magus clearly plays a central role in the story of Cyrus and Glenn. I wish that Magus' presence would be acknowledged in some way, but to be clear, this does not take away from the impact of this quest. It's just a bit strange. Personally, I feel that Frog's side quest is right up there with Chrono's resurrection in terms of emotional impact. With that said, neither of those are my favorite side quest. This side quest is easily my favorite in Chrono Trigger, and I'd argue it includes some of the most powerful moments in the entire game. It revolves around Fiona, a determined woman who dreams of restoring a nearby forest. When we first meet her in 600 AD, her house stands alone in a barren wasteland, the forest having been destroyed by fiends that still roam the area. Fiona explains that the forest can't be rebuilt while these creatures continue to threaten it, so naturally, we take care of the fiends. We make our way into the sunken desert and begin clearing out monsters. Deep within the cave, we find a very familiar-looking foe who is no match for us. With the fiends taken care of, we return to Fiona, who is grateful but also skeptical of the likelihood of restoring the forest. She claims it will take centuries of work to revive it. Robo, being the awesome guy he is, offers his services, saying that we can pick him up when the job is done. How can you not love this guy? Outside, we see a Robo immediately get to work, and I love that we can see him working on the world map. It's so charming, and it also paints this picture that Robo will work non-stop to ensure the forest is restored to its full health. We board the Epoch and travel to 1000 AD. When we arrive, we see the spoils of Fiona and Robo's efforts. Where Fiona's house once stood is a shrine that bears her namesake. At the back of the shrine is Robo, who looks a bit worse for wear. We activate Robo and he is happy to see us. For us, it was a quick hop through time, but for Robo, he spent 400 years working tirelessly to ensure the revival of the forest. We can see the effects the last 4 centuries have had on our boy, as he is clearly in need of a tune-up. That is not a priority of Robo's, however. He is simply proud and happy to see that his work is paid off. This quest is especially powerful if completed after Robo's side quest in 2300 AD. Robo, who was initially programmed to help eradicate humanity, selflessly works for 400 years straight in service of humanity and the prosperity of the world. It's genuinely lovely. Robo then calls for a celebration of their 400-year reunion, and of course, we do so in the forest he worked so hard to restore. This leads to one of the most iconic shots in all of RPGs, the complete party resting around a campfire. Moments like this are special, especially in RPGs where we typically only travel with 3 or 4 party members at a time. It's a treat to see these characters we have grown to love over the course of our journey all together, enjoying one final moment of peace. Luca is diligently repairing Robo as he reflects that Lavos may not be responsible for the gates after all. He suggests that there is an entity that wanted us to see these moments in time. Isla and Frog remark that it's similar to someone's life flashing before their eyes when they die, as if this entity is thinking back to moments that could have gone differently. It's heavily implied that this entity is the planet itself, who is dying due to the presence of Lavos. That's why the gates lead to very specific moments in the history of the planet. This entity has guided our party to the most important moments in the history of the planet so we can gain enough strength and knowledge to defeat Lavos and save the planet for good. In this conversation, the party wonders if they will experience similar things when they die. Marley then asks Luca if there is a point in time in her life that she would want to return to in order to change things. Luca denies this, but it's clear that she is hiding the truth. Eventually, the party goes to sleep, where it's revealed that Magus sleeps by standing upright like a vampire. Crazy. But then we find ourselves in control of Luca. She wanders away from the campsite and steps into a gate, but this gate is not blue like the other gates. It's red, and there is this ominous music that just makes me feel so uneasy. We are brought to her house in something that she refers to as that moment. If you are like me, you might wander down from this room and find ourselves on the second floor balcony of the main room. We see Luca's mother get stuck in one of Tabin's inventions. The invention powers on and begins dragging Luca's mom to a large gear. Luca's mom begs for help, and young Luca frantically searches for some way to power down the machine. We rush down to help, and we find the switch to power off the machine, but wait, what? It requires a password? Oh no, no, what do we do, No way, screw this. This time I explore the house much more carefully and find a diary entry that states the password to shutting down the machine is the name of Luca's mom, Lara. And thank goodness the letters in her name just so happen to be buttons on the Super Nintendo controller, because now we are able to enter the password to stop the machine, saving Luca's mom from life bound to a wheelchair. Luca returns to the present and is greeted by Robo. The scene they share is dependent on whether or not you save Luca's mom, and to be honest, the one that occurs if you fail is a better scene, but I just couldn't live with myself. That brings Fiona's side quest to a wonderful end. One detail I really love about this quest is that Robo will always be in 600 AD working on restoring the forest, which means that we can go back to 600 AD with Robo in our party, and we can all be proud of everything that he accomplished. With the forest restored and Luca's mom saved from the terrible accident, there is nothing left to do but prepare for the final battle. We have come a long way from chugging soda at the Millennial Fair, but there's no more time to waste. To save the world, we must defeat Lavos. Gaspar tells us that there are 3 paths that we can follow at this point. We can fly the Epoch to the Day of Lavos, we can use the bucket to warp to the Day of Lavos, or we can go to the Black Omen, the dungeon that appeared in the sky after Chrono's death. Once again, Chrono Trigger provides more choice to the player. Personally, I feel that going through the Black Omen is the best way to complete the game, as we have some unfinished business with Queen Zeal. Generally, the final dungeons of RPGs are long gauntlets with tough fights and maybe a few bosses sprinkled along the way. How does the Black Omen compare? Well, the Black Omen is honestly pretty easy to get through at this point of the game. Luminaire is basically the auto win button. To be fair, completing all side content in any RPG has you over-leveled for any main story content, so I'm not holding that against this game. It doesn't really bother me. That said, the Black Omen does hold the most insane twist I've ever seen in anything. Do you remember Gato, the singing robot from the Millennial Fair? You may have thought he was just a harmless robot, but think again.
You said his regards.
Now it's time for the final stretch. At the top of the Black Omen, we find doppelgangers of our party. Clearly, Queen Zeal has been playing a lot of Simon Says at the Millennial Fair. We make our way to the end of the hallway and we are finally reunited with Queen Zeal. She gives a classic evil villain monologue before confronting us in battle. She seems pretty confident, but wait until she sees my secret technique. Realizing she cannot utilize her full powers here, she activates the Mammon machine, beginning the second phase of the battle. Now this could be pretty tough. Let's see. Once we defeat the Mammon machine, it really gets good. Our party stands atop the Black Omen. We can see the horizon of the earth, as well as the moon cloaked in red. Queen Zeal appears in front of us full of ire. She states that she plans to be one with Lavos and control the universe forever, and she refuses to let us stand in the way of her destiny. And then, if Magus is in your party, we get this moment. Idiots. Nothing can live forever. Zeal, a pitiful woman duped by Lavos. I, myself, will bring an end to all of this. Prophet, you are doomed. I haven't forgotten what you did at the Ocean Palace. You will now forfeit your life. If you don't get chills from this, you are simply not human. This is an excellent moment for Magus as it further cements him as the best character in the game. He is just so cool. Having Magus' theme play perfectly accentuates how this battle is not only important for the party, but more than anything, it's important for Magus. His entire life has been shaped by his mother, and at this moment, he has the opportunity to confront his past and take control of his own destiny. For lack of a better term, this moment is simply epic. Following the fight with the Queen, Lavos awakens and then the battle begins. The first phase of Lavos is essentially a boss rush. I have seen people criticize this as being kinda lame, and from a gameplay perspective, I can see why. We were able to breeze through most, if not all of these fights because we are much stronger now than we were when we first fought these bosses. With that said, the boss rush actually makes complete sense in the context of Lavos' story. Remember, Lavos has been deep within the Earth since 65 million BC. In that time, he has been said to be absorbing the power and knowledge of the planet. So in that time, he absorbed the techniques of the most powerful enemies we have faced. That is the idea behind Lavos' first phase being a boss rush, and personally, I love this idea. It's a creative way to present a boss rush within the context of a story. Lavos eventually drops the pretense and begins using his own attacks. The creature is powerful, but remember, in true JRPG fashion, the creature we have been seeing the entire game is revealed to only be the outer shell for the true form of Lavos. So, we fight this form of Lavos just for this to also not be the final form. Do you want to know what the true ultimate form of Lavos is? No, not that one. Move it over a bit. This little floating flower thing. This is apparently the true form of Lavos. And I have a love-hate relationship with this. As I mentioned, Lavos has been absorbing power and knowledge from the planet for 65 million years. I think it's plausible that Lavos understands human nature would be suspect to the humanoid creature in the middle as the primary target. When I first played this game, I definitely assumed that the creature in the middle was one we needed to defeat to beat the game. I see this as a defense mechanism, and Lavos can manipulate its form to throw off the party. With that said, the second and third phases of Lavos are nothing compared to the creature form. Personally, I wish that they would have just expanded the fight with creature Lavos and made that terrifying monster the true final boss. When people think of Lavos, they remember the creature that rained destruction on the planet in 1999 AD. They don't remember the version that kinda looks like Cell from Dragon Ball Z, or the floating flower from the third phase. Luckily, the music for the final battle is great, and it still feels properly like a climactic finish. The backgrounds continually change to different time periods, and in turn, this telegraphs the attacks that Lavos will use against the party. The final battle is also a nice challenge, regardless of what level you are at. If you are not able to develop a solid strategy, you will lose this fight. Luckily, it's not as simple as casting Luminaire over and over, and that is a great thing. With the right strategy, you will eventually conquer the beast, bringing this incredible adventure to its end. Following the battle, we find ourselves back in 1000 AD, where peace has been restored to the world. Luca has brought people from all time periods to celebrate the accomplishments of Chrono and the gang, and we get to enjoy one final night together. Fittingly, we are now in control of Marley, who now gets to be the one leading Chrono around the Millennial Fair. If we make our way up to the location of Luca's invention, we see our party standing around a gate. Robo states that the gates have weakened since we defeated Lavos. This means we have to say our goodbyes so everyone can return to their proper time period before the gates close for good. One by one, the party members say their goodbyes, and yeah, it's sweet. Even Magus has a goodbye, kind of. He doesn't say anything, but he does give one final glance at the party. Marley asks if he's going to search for Shala, but he doesn't respond. At this point, I was feeling pretty solid emotionally. I had a smile on my face and I was very satisfied with the ending. But then it was time to say goodbye to Robo. He says that he will miss Luca, and she is clearly upset, afraid to say goodbye. Luca explains that Robo was born in a bleak future that was changed by our actions in defeating Lavos. She is worried that he may not even exist at all. Robo, ever the optimist, happily states that there will be a place for him in the future, leading to an angry hug from Luca. Now at this point, I was having a bit of trouble reading the dialogue as my eyes suddenly became blurry for some reason. Robo says his final goodbye and goes to leave, but not before bumping into Luca's invention, which is just so perfect. Luca states that the entity is finally at rest, and the party knows now that the adventure is truly over. It's time to dismantle the epoch and return to normal life. Before that thought can be finished, however, Chrono's mom chases their cat into the gate, and the gate closes, bringing Chrono's mom to who knows where in time. After all this adventuring, Chrono sees his mother disappear before his eyes. Now, how do you think Chrono reacts to this turn of events? Rarely do games make me laugh out loud, but this moment absolutely killed me. Man, I love this game. Chrono, Marley, and Luca agree to use the epoch one final time to save Chrono's mom. Marley's dad hangs a new bell in honor of his daughter, but the trio do not stick around for long because there is no time to rest. They have one last adventure to go on. As the credits roll, we see the epoch flying through different time periods. We get to see all of our party members one last time, including Robo, who I guess found a place for himself in the future after all. When the end shows up on the screen, you know that you just finished one of the greatest gaming experiences ever crafted. Chrono Trigger is a genuine labor of love, and this passion shines through every single nook and cranny of this game, and because of that love and passion from the team behind it, Chrono Trigger will live forever in gaming history. Quite possibly the most incredible aspect of Chrono Trigger is that it manages to pack all of these incredible elements, tight gameplay, incredible music, epic set pieces, fun characters, and an engaging story into a relatively short runtime. If you do everything in one playthrough, you can likely finish in under 20 hours. Now that is absolutely unheard of nowadays. Modern RPGs can take over 100 hours to complete, and a lot of those games use this as a selling point. Now don't get me wrong, those games have their place. But the issue is that many of these games include so much filler or monotonous content to pad out the runtime. Chrono Trigger has absolutely zero fluff. Every aspect of this game is purposefully crafted and only serves to add to the experience. I can't state how much I love this. I would argue that Chrono Trigger's 20 hours are filled with more memorable, emotional, and exciting moments than pretty much every single 100-hour RPG. Simply put, Chrono Trigger is a masterpiece. And now, we have fully covered its incredible gameplay, story, and characters. We reached the end. Now there's nothing left to do, right? When you restart the game after rolling the credits, you're greeted with the new option, New Game Plus. Clicking this allows you to restart the game, except all the characters retain their stats and equipment. From what I understand, Chrono Trigger is not the first video game to have a feature like this, but it's the first to coin the term, and it arguably boasts the best version of New Game Plus. I mentioned earlier that the point of the story at which you defeat Lavos determines the ending of the game. That is not really a factor in a first-time playthrough. But now, in New Game Plus, you begin with characters who are already adequately leveled to win the game. You can fight Lavos as early as the Millennial Fair. When you get to Luca's invention, you will see a sparkle on the right platform. Interacting with this immediately sends you to the Lavos fight. Now you can have Marley in your party for this, or you can face Lavos one-on-one with Chrono after Marley disappears. The endings you unlock through New Game Plus are generally played for laughs and not meant to represent a canon ending for the universe, and that makes sense. They are simply nice rewards for continuing to play and discover the game. And because of the game's short runtime, it's easy to keep coming back for more. Altogether, there are 12 endings in the original game, with some variations depending on things such as saving Luca's mother or not. The DS port adds an additional ending that better connects Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross. I do have thoughts about this, but I think that's better saved for a different video, as the lore of the Chrono series is not really the focal point of this video. Of the additional endings, my personal favorite is the Dream Project ending, where we wander through several rooms and are able to interact with the developers of Chrono Trigger. This ends in a room with the Dream Team, which consists of Akira Toriyama, Nobuo Uematsu, Yuji Ori, Kazuka Aoki, and Hironobu Sakaguchi. I won't go deep into each person's history, but let's just say they are referred to as the Dream Team for a reason. To that Dream Team and all of the developers of Chrono Trigger, all I can say is thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for creating an unforgettable experience that will live forever in gaming history. I still can't quite understand why my younger self did not connect with this game. It has everything a great RPG should have. Tight gameplay, rewarding exploration, an incredible soundtrack, and of course, unforgettable characters that we can't help but root for. I will never forget seeing Frog channel the power of the Masamune for the first time, or bringing Chrono to life at the top of Death Peak, or witnessing the entire party resting by a campfire, fully aware of the intense battle to come. This game is full of truly unforgettable moments, and honestly, I am already looking forward to my next playthrough so I can experience it all again. There are several RPGs from previous generations that I would struggle to recommend to new players. Whether it's outdated graphics or unrefined mechanics, 30-year-old games tend to feel like 30-year-old games. But this is not true for Chrono Trigger. Even when looking at this game through a modern lens, it is still incredibly satisfying to play, and in most respects, it surpasses the best RPGs of today. I have a feeling that this will be true long into our future, because just like its incredible cast of characters, Chrono Trigger has conquered time.